Yes, thank you very much. Good morning to all. Good morning to Ambassador Carwal and Ambassador Beldevoe from the Netherlands. I would have loved to hear from Ambassador Carwal about the election in his country, but I understand that it's not possible at this moment. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak at your conference about whistleblowing, the next level. Yesterday, as you heard from our ambassador, you heard from Mr. Thomason, chairman of the Dutch Whistleblowing Authority. This house for the whistleblowers, as it is called in the Netherlands, is, as I consider it to be, only one piece of what I would call an integrity system. Only if you have a good working integrity system in place, one as a society can uphold human rights that our ambassador was talking about this morning. It is an honor for me to tell you about my work, which also involves a small piece of this integrity system. Because of this work, I'm not active in politics, as I have to uphold a neutral position, but I do member the Netherlands Transparency International organization. So it's an honor for me to speak to you here, as Transparency International is one of the sponsors of this conference. I strongly believe in their work to improve international standards for integrity improvement. I met with Suzanne Snively, the New Zealand leader of Transparency International. I was born in New Zealand, so I have 2 passports. And I will meet with the newly appointed Dutch chairman, Luis van der Laan, in a few weeks. So I am a strong believer of Transparency International. An integrity system works to prevent wrongdoings and also works to conduct proper investigation if a case is brought forward, for instance, by a whistleblower. So in this system, you need standards of ethical leadership, a code of conduct, confidential advisors, etc. All part of this integrity system. As I said, I will tell you about my work, daily operation work, because I'm also a small part of this integrity system in the Netherlands. I will present a few publicly known, publicized cases with their specific dilemmas, and then I hope to engage with you in some sort of discussion and questions. About my work then, what I do most of the time is to advise mostly mayors about the handling of possible integrity breaches when involving holders of political office. And then I mean aldermen or members of city councils. This is difficult for these mayors because they don't come across these cases on a daily basis. Sometimes it's for them a once in a lifetime case. There are 3 vulnerabilities, as I see it, for politicians. First of all, they are involved in complex moral decision making. They have to weigh precisely all the rights, interests, and wishes in a particular case, and they have to publicly be accountable for their decision making. So that's difficult, a difficult task. Also, they have to deal with high integrity claims or aims and standards. And this is, of course, risky because bending the rules is always luring, and they have to do this work in a glass house operation. All is publicly visible. And third, it's difficult to maintain just reinforcement and prosecution if a case is brought to them. This, of course, being because the media is always there. There's most of the time party competition, political party competition involved internally and externally. And there are no specific rules about this. And small mistakes can have very big consequences. Well, what do I do and what won't I do? I advise, as I said, on handling possible integrity breaches. And this has all come about since the 2006 Civil Servants Act, which created in Dutch law an obligation to have integrity policy. So from then on, it was for every public known organization mandatory to have integrity policy. Of course, not stating what integrity policy is, but it created the standards of accountability and transparency. What I do is subsidized by the Ministry of Interiors, meaning that I'm impartial. I don't have to send a bill. And that's quite important to do this position. In the Netherlands, currently we have 355 mayors. We have 12 commissioners of the king for the provinces, and we have 22 water board executives. This as a whole we call local government in the Netherlands. They all have to act when a case is brought forward to them. They have to maintain integrity in their organization, and they have to consider what to do about a case brought to them. And that's where I come in, because as I said, it doesn't come to them every week, and sometimes a once in a lifetime event. So they certainly need at that time an advisor to help them to consider what to do. It has to be a case about holders of political office, as I said, and I handle about 70 cases a year. It's mostly about conflict of interest or favoritism or misuse of information, and of course, corruption. What do I advise about? Most of the cases also involve the question, is it a real integrity issue, or is it just malfunctioning of people or organizations? And of course, the question, is investigation necessary? Meaning, if the crook is already gone, what is the use of spending a lot of public money to get hold of the facts? This is only worthwhile if you can learn from it as an organization. So then you can still consider to investigate even when there's no possible person to hold accountable for this. I also advise on protocols to use, also part of this integrity system. Organizations should have protocols about how to investigate into matters and about the rights of all the people involved in an investigation like that. I advise on the issue, is transparency possible? Should it be publicly known that an investigation is ongoing, and should the public know who is involved and who is under suspicion of possible facts? I also advise on fair treatment of all the people involved. I advise on learning aspects, as I mentioned before. As we say, never waste a good crisis. It's not always nice, but you can certainly, as an organization and as an individual, learn from a case brought forward to you. I also advise on aftercare. There's a strong sense of moving forward after an event like an investigation into possible integrity breaches. And I always invite not to do this, but take care of all the people involved, also witnesses or colleagues or whatever. Don't just go over to working on a normal basis, but take care of everything involved. I also advise on the media. If the media are writing about it in a proper way, you can use these media by telling them that you will inform them first if you come across facts that you can share with the public. So that's about what I do. What I don't do, I don't investigate myself. I used to do this as a civil servant working at the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I used to be accountable for investigations into matters at embassies and consulates. And I was also the head of the Integrity Bureau of the City of Amsterdam. And of course, a city of that size, 13,000 civil servants, there's always investigation going on. So I have knowledge about how investigations go, but in my current work, I don't investigate myself. So I have no commercial interest in this. Well, why do they come to me, these mayors, mostly mayors? There's no national police for integrity investigations in the Netherlands. So investigations are most of the time conducted by commercial enterprises. Being, of course, expensive, with also the possible risk of a lack of legal knowledge about local government. So what you basically need is an advisor that knows about local government, but also knows about integrity investigation. Yeah, what you sometimes see is that people involved in integrity investigations, a lot of them being forensic accountants, and of course, if they investigate into cases involving sexual harassment, that's not a very logical choice. So that's also advice from me. I don't tell them what organization to go to, but I do tell them about their specific knowledge. And it's not logical to have a forensic accountant looking into a case about sexual harassment. What you also saw in the past, and which is also a reason why this expertise was formed, is cases that grow out of proportion. The most famous case in the Netherlands was about the former mayor of the city of Rotterdam, where an investigation took place into his invoices, possible false claims, and that investigation became so big because they investigated into all 12,000 invoices of this mayor during his 10 years reign in the city. Of course, not being a logical choice. If you see a whistleblower coming to you and talking about possible false claims of a mayor, you should go to this whistleblower and say, what claims are you talking about? And then look into that, and then also look in some others to see if patterns that you see are visible. But it's, of course, very silly to investigate into all 12,000 claims. This costed millions and years and lots of legal battles afterwards. And the reputation of the mayor was gone for good. We've never heard from him since. And his reputation was devastated, and for no good reason. There was not much to be said about these claims. So that made all possible that I took office of this advice sort of board for mayors when looking into a specific case. Let me then introduce a few cases to you, and then sign off and discuss some questions that you may have about these cases. I can talk to these cases because they were well presented in Dutch papers, so it is quite well known. What I would like you to focus on, what dilemmas come about if you look into these cases. First case is about misuse of confidential information. This being a one strike you're out offense in the Netherlands for most organizations. If you misuse confidential information for your personal use, you're out. That's written on the walls in most city halls. not literally, but it is a strong sense to make sure that all public servants are well aware of the fact that they have access to confidential information and that they shouldn't misuse this for personal use. In 2009, the Dutch royal family was under attack during Queen's Day festivities. They were on a parade, it was on live television, and a guy drove his car through the crowd and tried to get to the open bus where the royal family was present at that time. Of course, on live television, this was a shock to all the viewers. A lot of people watch television for the festivities and parade during Queen's Day. And the car license plate of the guy was visible on live television. Later on, it turned out that nearly 70 police officers, while not on duty, logged on to their IT system to check on the car license plate. As I said, one strike, you're out. The question, of course, arises, should they be fired? And what is relevant in a case like this? We'll talk about that later. Another case, a bit similar, somewhat more recent. We have in the Netherlands a reality star celebrity. Her name is Barbie. And she was treated in hospital. This was in the paper. And she was treated in hospital for a possible suicide attempt and possible drug abuse. It turned out later that numerous hospital staff looked into a digital file without any medical purpose. Of course, this all is logged, so they were held accountable afterwards. Why did you check into these celebrity medical data? Was there a medical reason for that? Well, then, of course, the question arises, what is different from the first case here? And also, what should be the punishment for these people? Of course, bear in mind, one strike, you're out. All people working at these organizations know quite well that they are not allowed to misuse this kind of information. Then, of course, the well-known case of Mr. Jack de Vries, Minister for Defense in the Netherlands. He was responsible for buying the Joint Strike Fighter, the fighter jet plane, which is being operated right now to be the new plane after the F-16 that we used to have in the Netherlands. His love affair with a colleague of his was leaked by a whistleblower, and he had to step down. He had to leave politics, and what he did after that, after his resignation, he joined the lobby firm that represents the Joint Strike Fighter. Of course, the question is that okay? Can you have a former minister who was responsible for buying this plane in a lobby firm that represents this plane? And then bear in mind, of course, that the Ministry of Defense do have rules about ex-politicians or ex-employees that are involved in doing business with the ministry. But of course, there's also a moral question. Should a minister, a former minister, join a lobby firm that represents a client like this with all the billions that were spent on this particular plane? With this, I would like to end my presentation and be involved, hopefully, in some sort of discussion about the dilemmas that come across when you talk about integrity investigations, specifically when involving holders of a political office. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you do have some questions for me about the operation of my work.
Thank you, Hans, for useful insight and valuable thoughts to think about regarding integrity. We have a question, how it is in Netherlands. I'm sorry. How justified are the reports of whistleblowers in Netherlands, and does it often turn out that the violation is not revealed at the very end?
Thank you for the question. This is a typical problem for cases brought forward by whistleblowers. The thing is, whistleblowers most of the time try to remain unknown, and what you usually need to conduct a proper investigation is to talk to the person that is bringing forward the claim of a possible integrity breach to verify if his information is correct. So remaining unknown is a big problem in investigation as such, and that was one of the main reasons why the House for Whistleblowers was created, because there were a lot of cases in the Netherlands from whistleblowers that nearly spent their whole career, half of their lives, to chase the case that they brought forward, and they were badly treated by their employees or other organizations. So that is a big problem of whistleblowers, and we do have to be honest about it. The House for Whistleblowers is doing well, but it's not doing well enough. There was a lot of criticism about the fact that they didn't conduct enough investigation into matters, and that the cases were not handled properly in the beginning. But I think it is doing quite well now.
Yes, thank you very much. We have one more question. In the Netherlands, how many police officers are there who have watched regarding this particular case of violation of the mobile of the royal family, and have they been punished, the attackers, for the car?
The attacker was one of the 8 persons that died in the attack. I think he died a day later. He was questioned while still in the car, so there was some argumentation about his motives in that. And what I talked about were 70 police officers, not all being police officers, but also other civil servants that had access to private information about license plate owners. So it was not only police, but it were in total 70 people involved in misuse of private information for personal use. Of course, in this case, it is well understandable that they did so. As I said, it was on live television and a national trauma. So it is quite easy for a person to think that it is justified to check on these private information. But still, it is an offense. You're not allowed to do this while not on duty. And they had punishment, but they were not sacked for it. Because of what I said, it is quite understandable that they acted in this way in these particular conditions.
Thank you very much, Hans. One more question. Is the protection of the whistleblower, how do you think, is it adequate? And is there a life after blowing a whistle?
Very important question. This is one of the big issues about whistleblower. It's one of the essential problems, and I think if you would really want to protect a serious case of a whistleblower, you should be able to support him also financially. It would be wise to, if, for instance, a whistleblower comes forward and says, I work at a nuclear plant, and I'm quite certain that the precautions for safety are not upheld properly. Of course, this being his employer might bring about difficulties for him, being a whistleblower, and questions about his loyalty for his employment. And if you were to protect him while investigating into this serious matter, and a matter of national interest, a matter of a lot of possible casualties involved, I think it should be possible to make sure that you take over his employment and pay him for the durance of the investigation. Of course, the law is not like this in the Netherlands at present, but it is my strong view that this would much better help whistleblowers when entering such big cases of very serious breaches of integrity.
Thank you again, Hans. I think that we can close with this important answer, the question and answer session. Thank you very much again for the presentation, and it was remarkable, really. Thank you. Now we will move on forward to the next speaker.